digital haze, looking for love in modern days. 21st century dating decoded, the official Speed Mingle podcast. Yeah, 21st century dating decoded, the official Speed Mingle podcast.
You know that specific shade of blue light that fills a room at like 11:30 at night?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We all know that glow.
Right. So picture yourself, or maybe someone you know, just sitting on the edge of the bed.
Yeah.
You are just bathed in that light.
Mm-hmm.
And your thumb is moving in this rhythm that feels, almost involuntary at this point.
Just muscle memory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're swiping left, swiping right, basically scrolling through this seemingly infinite gamified catalog of local human beings.
Right, the endless menu.
But instead of that rush of potential, instead of the butterflies that are supposed to actually accompany the search for romance, there is just this heavy sinking dread.
Yeah. It's a very specific modern exhaustion.
It really is. We are looking at a menu of thousands and somehow walking away feeling completely starved.
Which is wild when you think about it.
It is. It makes you wonder if the architecture we built to foster human connection is actually the very thing suffocating it.
Well, and the sociological data backing up that feeling of starvation is just staggering.
Really? What are the numbers looking like right now?
We are looking at a landscape where 127 million Americans are currently single.
Wow. 127 million.
Yeah, that is nearly 40% of the entire population.
That is massive.
It is. We have engineered the most complex, globally integrated communication networks in the history of our species, right?
Yeah.
Right. We are putting potential partners quite literally in our pockets, and yet the reported metrics for isolation and, profound loneliness are breaking historical records.
So the tech is everywhere, but we are lonelier than ever.
Exactly. The sheer scale of 127 million individuals existing in the state of digital saturation, but emotional famine, well, it tells us that the tools are fundamentally broken.
127 million people, that isn't just a niche demographic, that is an ocean.
A literal ocean of people.
It's an ocean of people holding a bucket with a hole in it.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the core of what we are unpacking today for you guys.
Yes, our main mission today.
Right. We are taking a deep dive into an ecosystem that's actually designed to plug that hole. It's a company called Speed Mingle.
And the source stack we have for this is just massive.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
We are looking at their entire corporate timeline, the event guides for their large-scale localized mixers.
Like the upcoming Summer Sizzle event?
Yeah, the Summer Sizzle down in Birmingham, Alabama. We've got their incredibly strict FAQ and policy pages, too.
Plus the mechanics of their proprietary card game, the 52+2 game.
Right. And maybe the most interesting part, the episode logs from their official company podcast, 21st Century Dating Decoded.
What makes this entire stack so compelling, I think, is that we aren't just looking at a business model here.
No. Right.
We are looking at a full-blown sociological counter-movement.
Yeah. It's wild. Speed Mingle is utilizing state-of-the-art 2026 software architecture, algorithmic compatibility scoring, encrypted privacy shields.
All this high-end tech.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they're using it to aggressively enforce a return to a 2001-style analog eye-to-eye interaction.
It is a total paradox.
It really is. They're using highly sophisticated digital tools to cure a social disease that was caused by highly sophisticated digital tools.
Right. Fighting fire with a very specific type of fire.
Exactly. But to understand the mechanics of this cure, we kind of have to rewind, right? We have to look at the timeline of Speed Mingle itself.
Because their corporate history operates as this eerie mirror reflecting our culture's entire relationship with internet socialization.
It maps almost perfectly onto the rise, the saturation, and then the ultimate fatigue of the digital dating era.
So let's start back in 2001.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Well, the landscape of the internet was incredibly rudimentary compared to today. People are still heavily reliant on dial-up.
Right, the screeching modem sounds.
Exactly. Socializing online meant, AOL chat rooms or very basic message boards.
So not a lot of local real-world crossover.
No. And out in Omaha, Nebraska, this young entrepreneur founds Speed Mingle.
in Omaha.
Yeah. The idea was basically to create structured, physical alternatives to the totally unpredictable nature of meeting people at bars or, relying on blind setups from friends.
Which are basically your only options back then.
Right. So they start rolling out these highly structured analog concepts, things like the 4-minute date.
Oh, the lock and key mixers.
Yep. And even sensory deprivation concepts like dine in the dark.
Which sounds terrifying, but I guess people were into it.
Well, in 2001, the internet had not yet made its grand promise to automate romance.
Ah, that's a good point.
People were highly motivated to attend structured physical events because, if you wanted to expand your social circle beyond your immediate workplace or your neighborhood, you literally had to put your physical body in a room with strangers.
You had to leave the house.
Exactly. The novelty of a 4-minute date was that it provided a socially acceptable, hyper-efficient perimeter for cold approaching people.
And that novelty definitely had legs. Because by 2004, the events are popping up in markets like Birmingham, Alabama.
Which brings in Brad Peters.
Right. Brad Peters, this attendee, goes to a speed mingle event, sees the potential, and by 2006, he just buys the entire company.
And he moves the headquarters down to Birmingham.
Yeah. And between 2006 and 2009, they are in aggressive expansion mode across the entire Southeast.
And they aren't just doing traditional heterosexual dating anymore at this point?
No, they are branching out. They're pioneering LGBTQ plus mixers, friendship-building events.
Couples night outs, purely professional networking mixers.
They are essentially trying to become the physical infrastructure for all local social discovery.
They were building a generalized social utility, but then their momentum collided with the macroeconomic reality of 2009.
Right. The crash.
Yeah, the economic downturn just decimated the hospitality and events sector. When consumer confidence drops, discretionary spending on specialized social mixers is like one of the first things cut from a household budget.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Because what happens next is basically the hinge point of our entire deep dive today.
It really is the most fascinating part of the timeline.
Right. Following that 2009 economic crash, Speed Mingle goes completely dormant. They disappear.
Total ghost town.
It's a 14-year hiatus where they are essentially a ghost company. They do not relaunch until late 2024, and they come back with this highly modernized tech-forward approach.
Designed specifically for the current landscape.
Yeah. Now, I look at that 14-year gap from 2009 to 2024, and that is exactly the Wild West era of swipe-based apps.
Tinder launches in 2012, Bumble in 2014.
Right. The entire decade was a chaotic gold rush of gamified dating, and Speed Mingle just sat the entire thing out.
They weren't even on the board.
So my question is, was this accidental hibernation caused by a slow economic recovery, or did they recognize that they just couldn't compete with the free, dopamine-driven slot machine of swipe apps until the consumer was completely exhausted by them?
If we connect this to the bigger picture that's outlined in their podcast, it appears to be a mix of both. Economic necessity initially, but then it evolves into a highly strategic waiting game.
Okay, explain that.
In the podcast, Brad Peters discusses this phenomenon he terms the Great Demographic Divergence.
The Great Demographic Divergence.
Yeah. During those 14 years, the tech industry basically sold society on a very specific premise, which was that scale equals quality.
More is better.
Right. The thesis was that if you give a user access to 10,000 potential partners in a 50-mile radius, the law of large numbers essentially guarantees they will find an optimal match.
We totally bought into the idea that volume was the ultimate filter.
We all did. But the Great Demographic Divergence proved the exact inverse. The architecture of those platforms, the infinite scroll, the gamified matching, it was optimized for user retention, not user resolution.
Right. They don't make money if you fall in love and delete the app.
Exactly. The platforms didn't want you to find a partner and leave. They wanted you to stay engaged. And over a decade, this conditioned a population to treat human beings as disposable commodities.
There's always someone new if you just swipe one more time.
Which created massive behavioral sinks. So by the time Speed Mingle relaunches in 2024, they aren't trying to disrupt a thriving industry.
No, they're stepping into a devastated landscape.
Right, offering a specific remedy to a demographic that is actively rejecting the swipe model.
They literally let the apps do the dirty work of burning out the consumer base.
It's brilliant timing, honestly.
It is. It's fascinating timing.
Yeah.
But here is the massive logistical hurdle they face in 2026. You cannot simply dust off a 2001 business plan and expect it to work today.
Definitely not.
The sources actually make a point to note that 90% of early speed dating companies failed.
90%.
Yeah. They died out long before the apps ever even showed up.
Because the actual experience was terrible.
It really was. The actual experience of analog speed dating was often excruciatingly awkward, wildly inefficient, and frankly, fraught with privacy risks.
Huge privacy risks.
So how does Speed Mingle engineer a return to face-to-face interaction without stepping on those exact same landmines that destroyed their predecessors?
Well, the mechanism they use to bypass those historical landmines is their proprietary digital platform, SmartSync.
Ah, SmartSync.
Yes. This is where we see them leveraging high-end software to actively mitigate the specific anxieties of in-person gathering.
Right. This is what we're calling the SmartSync paradox. Let's look at how they handle the curation of a room, because it fundamentally upends how we think about matching.
It changes everything.
The traditional model, whether it's an old-school speed dating event or a modern app filter, is built on demographic silos.
Right. Age, location, income.
Exactly. You tell the system you want a man between 30 and 35 within a 15-mile radius. Speed Mingle explicitly rejects this.
They throw it completely out the window.
Their FAQ states they do not group people solely by age, race, or gender during the event rotations. Instead, they use interest-based matching.
Which is a huge shift.
It is. Before you ever walk into a venue, like Gary's Brewery for a mixer, you feed SmartSync data regarding your core values, your specialized hobbies, your professional ascent goals, and your absolute deal breakers.
And shifting the algorithmic weight from chronological age to psychographic compatibility is just a massive structural change.
It makes a lot of sense, though.
It does, because relying on birth years as a primary metric for connection is inherently flawed. I mean, two people born in the same year share a cultural timeline, sure, but that does not equate to conversational chemistry.
Not at all.
If you seek two strangers together based purely on age, you are essentially forcing them to interrogate each other until they stumble upon a shared interest.
Which usually eats up the entirety of a 5-minute rotation.
Exactly, and it often just results in dead air.
But let me stop you right there and kind of push back on this a bit, because I can hear the listener's skepticism already.
Okay, let's hear it.
The idea that age demographics don't matter sounds great in utopian sense, but we are talking about dating here. Life stages matter immensely.
They absolutely do.
A 32-year-old might be aggressively looking to start a family and buy a starter home. A 55-year-old might be an empty nester looking to travel and downsize.
Very different priorities.
Right. So can shared hobbies, even deep ones like a mutual love for independent filmmaking or a specific culinary scene, that actually bridge that massive gap in a high-stakes 5-minute interaction? It feels like you are setting people up for a harsh reality check.
That is a critical challenge, and it's exactly why the concept of deal breakers is weighted so heavily in the SmartSync algorithm.
Okay, so the algorithm accounts for this.
Yes. The system isn't just blindly throwing a 32-year-old and a 55-year-old together just because they both like indie films. The algorithm cross-references those life-stage deal breakers first.
So it filters the big stuff out beforehand.
Precisely. If the 32-year-old marks wants children as a non-negotiable and the 55-year-old marks done raising kids, they will not be placed in the same rotation, regardless of their shared hobbies.
That makes total sense.
But consider the alternative scenario. Let's say a 32-year-old who is child-free by choice and focused on early retirement meets a 55-year-old who shares those exact lifestyle parameters.
Ah, I see.
In that specific context, their shared values and hobbies become a much stronger foundation for connection than someone who merely shares a birth decade but has diametrically opposed life goals.
Okay, I get it now. So the algorithm is filtering out the structural incompatibilities in the background, which allows the actual face-to-face interaction to focus purely on the shared psychographics.
It clears the runway for actual chemistry.
It gives you a starting line that isn't just, asking about the weather.
Right.
But having a good conversation is only half the battle. The other half, and this is arguably the primary reason those early speed dating companies had a 90% mortality rate, is the sheer terror of rejection.
Oh, the rejection aspect was brutal.
And the massive privacy vulnerabilities of the early 2000s model.
The security protocols of legacy speed dating were practically non-existent. I mean, attendees would converse, write down names on a physical paper scorecard, and literally just hand it to a host at the end of the night.
Which is terrifying when you think about it.
It really is.
The sources point out that some of these defunct companies would routinely email the entire unredacted attendee list to everyone a few days later.
Just a massive data dump.
You'd go to an event, decide you had absolutely no interest in anyone there, and on Tuesday morning, your personal email and phone number are suddenly in the inbox of 20 strangers.
Including the guy who made you incredibly uncomfortable at table 4.
Exactly. It was a catastrophic breach of operational security.
And that unauthorized release of personal data not only drove consumers away, but it created an environment of lingering anxiety that basically poisoned the actual events.
Well, SpeedMingle clearly studied those failures because SmartSync operates primarily as a heavily fortified privacy shield.
That's the best way to describe it.
Let's look at the actual user experience of attending an event. First, when you arrive, you only use your first name.
No last names.
No handles, no business cards. Second, and this is heavily enforced, direct solicitation of contact information during the event is strictly discouraged.
They do not want you asking for numbers.
You are instructed not to ask for a number while sitting at the table.
And the psychological relief provided by that specific rule cannot be overstated.
I mean, have you ever found yourself trapped in that specific social hostage situation?
Oh, absolutely.
You were at a networking event or a bar or a dinner party, and someone you have zero chemistry with leans across the table and says, "Hey, let me grab your number so we can get together."
It's the worst feeling.
You are instantly doing complex mental gymnastics. How do I say no without escalating the situation? How do I reject this person to their face without ruining the vibe of the entire room or, worse, triggering a hostile reaction?
It places the individual, particularly women, in a highly vulnerable position.
They're very vulnerable.
They often feel pressured to provide fake information or just to acquiesce simply to de-escalate the immediate physical tension.
But here's where it gets really interesting with SpeedMingle. SmartSync completely neuters that tension. You don't reject anyone to their face.
Not at all.
You just keep your phone discreetly in your lap or your bag.
Yeah.
As you rotate from table to table, you log your impression, your vibe directly into the app.
Just a simple yes or no.
You simply log interest or pass. And the platform only unlocks a secure chat protocol after the event concludes, and only if the logged interest is mutual.
They have taken the double opt-in mechanism, which is arguably the sole redeeming feature of modern swipe apps, where communication is gated behind mutual consent, and seamlessly layered it over a physical environment.
It's so smart.
By removing the threat of real-time face-to-face rejection, you lower the defensive posture of every single person in the room. They aren't anticipating a confrontation, so they can actually relax into the conversation.
You get to go home, decompress, open the web app, and see if there's a match.
On your own time.
Right. And if there is, you chat through their secure portal. You haven't surrendered your actual phone number until you explicitly choose to do so, after vetting them through the chat.
It completely reframes the purpose of the technology.
It really does. They aren't using the app to find the people. They're using the app to create a sterile perimeter around the people.
Exactly. The technology is deployed strictly to manage the administrative and anxiety-inducing aspects of courtship, leaving the human beings free to just focus on the nuance of interaction.
Okay, so we have the perimeter secured, the privacy shield is active, and the algorithm has populated the tables based on psychographic alignment.
Everything is set.
Right. But the next hurdle is the conversation itself. Because getting two people in a room safely doesn't actually prevent them from engaging in the most soul-crushing ritual of modern socialization.
You mean the small talk loop?
The small talk loop. How do you stop two nervous strangers from spending their entire 5-minute rotation discussing their commute or answering the dreaded, "So what do you do for work?"
Small talk is just a societal defense mechanism.
That's a good way to put it.
It is predictable, it is safe, and it yields absolutely zero actionable data about a person's character, their humor, or their emotional intelligence.
SpeedMingle's solution to this is to forcibly inject structure into the vulnerability. They introduced this proprietary tool called 52+2, the card game.
It's not just a gimmick either.
No, according to the sources, this isn't just an icebreaker deck. It was developed in consultation with communication experts to act as a conversation catalyst. Every single table at a SpeedMingle event has one of these decks sitting right in the center.
And the physical presence of the deck is vital.
How so?
It acts as a third party in the interaction. It basically assumes a social risk of initiating a deep or unconventional topic.
Right. Let's spend some real time exploring the categories within this deck, because it gives us a really clear window into what kind of data they believe is actually necessary to form a connection.
The categories are very deliberate.
The 54 cards are divided into specific thematic prompts. We start with 21st century courting.
This category focuses on the shared trauma of modern dating.
The shared trauma, yeah.
It prompts participants to swap stories about disastrous dates, bizarre app interactions, or just confusing social signals.
I honestly think this is a brilliant opener. Imagine sitting down with a stranger, pulling a card, and the prompt asks, what is the most elaborate lie someone has told you on a dating app profile?
It instantly changes the dynamic.
Immediately, you are forming an alliance. You're bonding over the absolute absurdity of the landscape you both inhabit.
Right.
It cuts through the pretense of trying to look perfect and says, look, we both know this process is a nightmare. Let's laugh about it.
Shared adversity is one of the fastest ways to build rapport. By framing the discussion around past failures, it signals humility.
It takes the ego out of it.
Exactly. It demonstrates that you don't take yourself too seriously, which is a highly prioritized trait for long-term compatibility.
So true. Then you move into the cringe or cute category. This is definitely lighter.
Much lighter.
It involves rating ridiculous pickup lines or debating the merits of aggressive romantic gestures. It injects some levity. But then the deck pivots into significantly heavier territory.
Mm-hmm.
There is a category called behind closed doors.
Which sounds risky.
It does. The guide carefully notes that this explores the lighter, humorous, and tasteful side of physical intimacy. Now, the idea of asking a complete stranger about their views on intimacy within the first 4 minutes of meeting them, I mean, that sounds like a recipe for a harassment complaint.
It would be, absolutely, if the question was generated spontaneously by the individual.
Right.
But this is where the genius of the structural proxy comes in.
That's the perfect way to look at it. The deck is essentially your conversational wingman.
It takes the blame.
Exactly. If the prompt is, what is a highly romanticized intimacy trope in movies that you actually find completely unappealing, you aren't the one being inappropriately forward.
No, you're just reading the card.
You could literally point at the piece of cardboard and say, hey, don't look at me. The card is asking the weird questions.
Yeah.
You get the benefit of hearing how they communicate about sensitive private matters without absorbing the social risk of actually bringing it up.
It tests their boundaries and their maturity in handling complex topics, all under the guise of a game.
Which leads naturally into the next one, the ball and chain category.
Dealing with the harsh realities of long-term commitment.
Right, getting past the honeymoon phase. Do they have crippling commitment phobias? Do they view marriage as a partnership or a trap?
Heavy stuff, but necessary.
But the category that I found genuinely revolutionary is the final one. It's called no. No.
Yes. The third rail.
These cards intentionally trigger the most sensitive third rail topics possible. We were talking deep philosophical divides, highly controversial cultural issues, basically the exact things you were historically instructed to never bring up at a dinner party, let alone a first date.
What's fascinating here is the underlying psychological intent of the no-no category. The designers of the deck explicitly state that these prompts are not designed to spark debate.
Wait, they aren't?
No, they are designed to force mutual understanding in a high-stakes conversational environment.
How does that actually function in reality, though? Because if you look at the internet today, if someone posts a controversial opinion on a social platform, it takes roughly 3 seconds for the comment section to completely devolve into death threats and absolute vitriol.
Just instant toxicity.
Right. So how does putting a controversial prompt on a card not just end the mini-date in a screaming match?
Because the medium fundamentally alters the message. When you are engaging with a controversial topic online, you are interacting with pixels. The screen acts as a dehumanizing filter.
You don't see a person, you see text.
Exactly. You are devoid of the evolutionary cues required for empathy. You cannot see the micro-expressions of hesitation. You cannot monitor their pupil dilation. You cannot hear the specific cadence and tone of their voice.
You just assume the worst.
You are projecting your worst assumptions onto a blank avatar. But when you draw a no-no card and ask a highly charged question to a physical human being sitting 24 inches away from you, those biological systems reactivate.
So you are basically forced to witness the humanity of the person you disagree with.
Precisely. The presence of physical consequence and social decorum forces nuance back into the equation.
That is so interesting.
You might discover that you possess diametrically opposed views on a subject, but because you are sharing physical space, guided by the rules of the game, you are neurologically primed to listen for comprehension rather than just formulating your next attack.
It is an exercise in re-civilizing discourse.
It's using a card game to reprogram conflict resolution.
But to fully grasp why Speed Mingle felt it necessary to build all these guardrails, the privacy shields, the curated matching, the forced vulnerability proxies, we really have to examine what they're protecting these attendees from.
We need to look at the environment outside the events.
We need to look at what Brad Peters and his guests are discussing on the 21st Century Dating Decoded podcast.
Because the podcast serves as an incredibly detailed diagnostic log of the modern dating landscape's pathology.
That's a great way to frame it.
If SmartSync and the 52+2 cards are the cure, the podcast episodes detail the disease.
And the disease has definitely developed its own vocabulary. They have a recurring segment on the show called the Dating Slang Scan.
It's quite the list.
Reading through the transcripts of this segment is honestly like reading a glossary of psychological warfare. The language we use to describe romance has mutated into something highly clinical and honestly often deeply toxic.
It's very defensive.
I want to spend significant time unpacking these terms with you because they reveal so much about the state of the consumer right now. Let's start with a very prominent one: delusionships.
The podcast defines a delusionship as the act of aggressive, unilateral overimagining based on minimal digital input.
We see this constantly. You match with someone on an app. They have a well-curated profile, maybe a picture of them at a farmer's market, a witty prompt about their favorite coffee order.
Just basic surface-level stuff.
Right, and they send you one completely innocuous message like, hey, how is your week going? And the recipient, within a matter of hours, constructs an entire fictional narrative.
They map out the witty banter they will have.
Yes. They imagine introducing this person to their parents. They project an entire shared future based on a single typing bubble. They are deeply invested in a relationship that exists entirely within their own skull.
While it is easy to dismiss that as just humorous overeagerness, it is fundamentally a trauma response to an environment of extreme scarcity.
A trauma response.
Yes. When individuals are starved for genuine reciprocal intimacy, the brain actively seeks to manufacture it. The digital environment provides just enough scaffolding, a photo, a brief text, for the user to hang their elaborate fantasies on.
So it's easier to dream it up than find it.
It is psychologically safer to engage in a delusionship because the fantasy version of that person will never reject you, whereas engaging with the complex reality of a flawed human being carries immense risk.
But the collateral damage is immense. Because when that person inevitably stops replying 3 days later, because, they were just bored on their commute and never actually intended to date you, you aren't just shrugging off a missed connection.
No, you are actively mourning.
You are actively mourning the collapse of a detailed future. You experience the neurological grief of a breakup for a relationship you never actually participated in.
It is an exhausting cycle.
Okay, let's look at the next term, which genuinely stumped me initially: banksing.
Banksing.
They did a whole deep dive on this concept in July. My first thought went straight to the street artist, Banksy. Specifically, that stunt where his painting sold for millions at auction, and the moment the gavel dropped, a shredder built into the frame activated and destroyed the canvas.
Which was a masterful commentary on the commodification of art.
Sure, but how does that translate into a dating behavior? Does it imply destroying a relationship the exact moment it becomes valuable?
It is the ultimate manifestation of preemptive self-sabotage.
Explain that.
In the context of the podcast, banksing occurs when a connection is actually progressing in a healthy, mutually beneficial manner. Trust is being established, vulnerability is reciprocated, and the relationship is appreciating in emotional value.
So the gavel is about to drop.
Yes. And at that moment of peak realization, the realization that this could be permanent and therefore the potential for heartbreak is absolute when individual panics.
The exposure is just too terrifying.
So they activate the shredder. They deliberately instigate an unresolvable conflict. They engage in sudden infidelity. Or they utilize the ultimate vanishing act. They intentionally destroy the connection right in front of the other person.
So what does this all mean? I mean, why would someone destroy the exact thing they claim to be looking for?
Control.
Control.
If you allow someone else to break your heart, you are a victim of circumstance. If you banksy the relationship yourself, you retain the agency.
Wow.
You guaranteed the destruction, but you controlled the timeline. It is a highly destructive coping mechanism born from a landscape where trust has been systematically eroded.
They would rather burn the house down themselves than wait to see if a storm hits.
That is incredibly bleak.
It is very sad.
Let's pivot to something slightly more systemic then. The 4/6s phenomenon. This term critiques the hyper-quantification of partner selection, which is driven heavily by algorithmic filter interfaces.
The podcast highlights this as the breaking point for a lot of digital daters. The 4/6s represents a viral checklist of demands that became normalized in online dating profiles.
It's very specific.
It is. It typically mandates that a partner must be at least 6 feet tall, earn a 6-figure salary, possess a six-pack of abs, and the fourth 6 varies. Sometimes it's a 6-month buffer from a previous relationship or, something more anatomically crass. It's an incredibly rigid set of metrics.
It is the logical endpoint of treating human beings like configurable products on an e-commerce platform.
Like customizing a laptop.
Right. When an app trains you to filter humans by height, income, and zip code, it encourages the belief that you can mathematically engineer a perfect partner.
But the math doesn't actually work. If you look at census and health data, the percentage of the population that simultaneously meets all of those criteria is statistically negligible.
You are filtering out 99.9% of humanity.
Exactly, before you ever even assess their character.
And what the podcast explores is the inevitable cultural backlash to this mindset. People are discovering that they can secure a partner who successfully checks off all 4/6s, only to realize that person lacks empathy, struggles with communication, or possesses a deeply incompatible worldview.
Because the metrics measure status, not chemistry.
Right. The 4/6s cannot quantify resilience or shared humor.
Which brings us full circle to why Mingle SmartSync explicitly hides those traditional demographics and forces interest-based matching.
They are actively trying to dismantle the 4/6s mentality by preventing you from seeing the data points that trigger it.
Okay, the next term is a vicious upgrade to a very old problem. Ghostlighting.
The evolution of the disappearing act.
We all understand the concept of ghosting. You go on 3 dates, things seem fine, and suddenly they stop answering texts. They vanish into the ether. It's cowardly, but we've all sort of adapted to it. How does that behavior mutate into ghostlighting?
Well, gaslighting combines the sudden abandonment of ghosting with the psychological manipulation of gaslighting.
Oh, this is awful.
In this scenario, an individual vanishes completely, but weeks or months later, they reinitiate contact in a highly casual manner.
Like nothing happened.
Yeah, perhaps liking a social media post or sending a really mundane text message. And when the recipient understandably confronts them about the disappearance, asking why they vanished, the perpetrator denies the reality of the event.
Wait, they act like the absence never happened.
Worse. They project the responsibility onto the victim. They will respond with something like, "What do you mean I disappeared? We just naturally fell out of touch. You have a phone, too. You could have reached out at any time."
Oh, my God.
They manipulate the narrative to suggest that the sudden traumatic silence was actually a mutual unspoken agreement, making the victim question their own perception of the relationship's dynamics.
That is emotional terrorism.
Yeah.
You are sitting there looking at a blank text thread from 3 months ago, wondering if you were the one who lost your mind.
It weaponizes the ambiguity of digital communication against the person who got left behind.
Let's end this slang scan on a concept that actually represents a pushback against all this toxicity, thankfully. Freak matching.
This is a highly encouraging behavioral shift, moving away from the sanitized curation of early app culture.
For years, the prevailing wisdom was to make your profile as universally palatable as possible. You wanted to cast a wide net, so every single profile read the exact same way.
I love travel, eating tacos, watching The Office, and going on adventures.
Yes, it's a profile designed by committee to offend absolutely no one.
And consequently, it attracts no one of substance because it reveals absolutely nothing about the individual's true internal landscape.
Freak matching is the complete rejection of that strategy. It is the conscious decision to lead with your most obscure, highly specific, and potentially off-putting traits.
You lean into the weird.
You aren't looking for someone who likes movies. You put in your profile that you have a militant, unyielding obsession with 1970s Italian giallo horror films. You don't say you are a foodie. You state up front that you put mayonnaise on your pizza and you refuse to date anyone who tries to stop you.
It is a filtering mechanism based on radical authenticity. By leading with your eccentricities, you are immediately repelling the general population, which is the goal.
You want to scare people off.
You are narrowing the funnel down to the exact specific individual who shares, or at least appreciates, your unique brand of neurosis. It values deep alignment over broad appeal.
This raises an important question, though. When we look at this entire glossary delusionships, banksying, ghostlighting, freak matching, are we just looking at clever internet jargon created by influencers, or are these terms functioning as elaborate defense mechanisms for a deeply wounded demographic?
That is an important question about the utility of language. I would argue these terms are profound psychological armor. The vocabulary has become hyper-analytical, specifically to distance the user from the raw emotional impact of disconnection.
Make it less personal.
Right.
Yeah.
If you experience the profound pain of sudden rejection, that hurts deeply. But if you can intellectualize that pain, if you can categorize it and say, I wasn't rejected, I was simply the victim of a classic bank-seeing maneuver by a toxic individual, you insulate your ego.
You transform a deeply personal failure into a recognizable systemic pattern.
Exactly. The language allows us to survive the sheer volume of rejection that the apps facilitate.
We are essentially slapping clinical labels on our heartbreak so we don't have to feel the actual bleeding.
That's a poetic way to put it, but yes.
And this need for authenticity, this total exhaustion with the games, isn't just a phenomenon among 20-somethings on TikTok. The source material spends significant time on a demographic shift they call the Great Divorce Revolution.
Which is the influx of older demographics individuals in their late 50s, 60s, and 70s who are dissolving long-term marriages and re-entering a dating pool that looks entirely alien to the one they left 30 years ago.
These people are being thrown into this absolute meat grinder of ghostlighting and 4/6s.
And they have no patience for it.
Right. The podcast notes they aren't adopting the slang. Instead, they are driving a movement called true casting.
True casting.
It's the ultimate evolution of freak matching, but completely stripped of the irony. True casting is brutal, unvarnished honesty.
Just laying it all out there.
It's an older dater saying, look, I am 62, I have 2 ex-spouses, I have a bad hip, I require 9 hours of sleep, I carry significant emotional baggage, and I have absolutely zero interest in compromising my routine. This is the reality of my existence. Take it or leave it.
True casting is the privilege of exhaustion.
The privilege of exhaustion, wow.
When an individual has lived through decades of complex relationships, they no longer possess the surplus energy required to maintain a digital avatar. They refuse to perform.
They just don't have the time for the games.
And this is why Speed Mingle's analog model is capturing this demographic so effectively. True casting requires the physical presence of a human being to convey the requisite sincerity. It cannot be communicated effectively through a text box.
Which brings us perfectly to the practical application of all this theory. Let's say you, the listener, have heard enough.
You're ready to try it.
You are exhausted by the delusionships, you respect the true casting movement, and you decide you want to engage with the Speed Mingle ecosystem. You buy a ticket to the summer Sizzle event.
Okay, so you're going in.
What are the actual logistical ground rules of this universe? Because the sources reveal a choose-your-own-adventure complexity that goes way beyond standard dating.
Well, the foundational rule of the ecosystem is that you must explicitly define your objective.
Your deal-breaker track.
Yes, because Speed Mingle has fundamentally decoupled the concept of speed meeting from the exclusivity of romantic dating.
This blew my mind. When you set up your SmartSync profile, before you even look at a venue schedule, you must select one of 4 primary deal-breaker tracks. You are telling the algorithm the exact nature of the connection you are seeking.
And those tracks are very distinct.
The tracks are professional ascent, which is structured networking and mentorship; social synergy, which is explicitly for finding platonic friendships; romance and real chemistry, which is the traditional dating track; and spontaneous adult play, which is their carefully worded category for casual, non-committal physical encounters.
By categorizing the intent up front, they eliminate the most pervasive friction point in modern socializing.
Mismatched expectations.
Exactly. Everyone in the room is operating on a transparent, verified track.
So what does this all mean in practice? Let me challenge the premise here for a second.
Go for it.
I understand the efficiency, but isn't it inherently jarring to walk into a dimly lit brewery with cocktails flowing and a speed dating vibe and sit down across from someone who is just looking for a Series A investor, or someone just looking for a buddy to play pickleball with?
It sounds strange at first.
Does the 5-minute rotation model actually work for finding a business partner?
Your skepticism is completely valid, but it stems from how modern society has artificially siloed our social functions. Over the last 20 years, we have accepted the premise that different types of relationships require entirely segregated environments.
Right. We use LinkedIn for commerce
We use Bumble BFF for platonic bonds.
and Tinder for romance.
We treat them as distinct disciplines. But sociologically and historically, human connection does not operate in silos.
We used to do all of that in the exact same town square.
Precisely. You met your spouse, your business collaborator, and your closest confidant in the same tavern, the same community hall, or the same congregation.
That's a really good point.
Speed Mingle's architecture argues that the underlying metric for any successful relationship is baseline chemistry. A natural, unforced conversational cadence is just as critical for a thriving business partnership as it is for a romantic marriage.
Because if you can't talk to them, you can't work with them.
If you cannot enjoy a 5-minute conversation with a potential gym buddy, you will not survive a 6-month project with them. The physical table is the ultimate testing ground for chemistry, regardless of the ultimate objective.
Okay, I see the logic. The silos are a digital invention, and the table essentially breaks them down. So you've picked your track, you've logged your deal breakers. Now, what kind of physical environment are you walking into?
Well, they have a whole menu of event formats.
Right, because the sources outline formats that cater to different levels of social endurance. Let's run through the menu. The flagship events are called happenings.
These are the big ones.
This is what the Summer Sizzle in Birmingham is. These are large-scale, activity-based events. They utilize concepts like sip and speed at craft breweries, or shuck and socialize at local oyster bars, like Slick Lip Seafood.
And they deliberately partner with premium local venues on off-peak nights, like a Tuesday or Wednesday.
Right, creating a symbiotic relationship with local businesses.
But incorporating an activity, whether it's tasting a flight of beers or learning to shuck an oyster, is a classic psychological misdirection.
So.
It gives the attendees a shared physical task to focus on, which naturally lowers the stakes of the eye contact and provides an immediate, low-pressure conversational fallback if the dialogue stalls.
Oh, if the conversation dies, you can just talk about the oyster. It's built-in relief.
Exactly.
Then they offer the one-to-one format. This is their premium concierge-level matchmaking. If you are a high-stress professional who just absolutely loathes the chaotic energy of a mixer, this SmartSync algorithm curates a single, highly vetted match.
And the company organizes a private coffee or cocktail meetup for you. It's entirely hands-off for the user.
Then there's the format that feels the most revolutionary to me, Speed Mingle Social.
The decentralized, unhosted model.
Yes, there's no timer, there's no bell ringing, there's no MC on a microphone. The company simply designates a specific local coffee shop or pub on a specific night.
You just show up.
You walk in on your own time, you look for the table displaying the discrete Speed Mingle sign, and you sit down. You know that everyone at that table or in that section is an opted-in member of the community.
It replicates the feeling of just happening to bump into friendly regulars at a neighborhood spot.
But with the safety net of knowing, everyone is open to approach.
Right.
And finally, they offer Anywhere, which is their global video platform for those who want the face-to-face interaction, but from the security of their own home.
So the ecosystem is comprehensively designed to intercept the consumer at whatever level of social readiness they currently possess and slowly onboard them back into physical reality.
But no matter which format you choose, you are bound by their operational rules. And their FAQ section is a masterclass in boundary setting.
It is very strict.
One rule in particular is fantastic. It's their official dress code. It states, in black and white, dress as if you were with your grandmother in public. If she would not approve, change.
It is a brilliantly effective piece of policy writing.
It is so clear.
Industry terms like business casual or smart casual are highly subjective and culturally fragmented. But the grandmother rule evokes a universally understood visceral standard of decorum.
Everyone gets it immediately.
It instantly communicates to the attendee that the environment they are entering demands a baseline of respect, modesty, and intention. It is not a nightclub.
If Meemaw wouldn't want you wearing that cutout shirt to Sunday dinner, do not wear it to the Sip and Speed. It leaves zero room for misinterpretation.
None at all.
And speaking of leaving no room for misinterpretation, we have to look at the brutal, refreshing honesty of their refund policy.
The refund policy is the ultimate philosophical statement of the company. It directly attacks the consumer entitlements fostered by the tech industry.
We have been completely rewired by things like Amazon Prime and Uber. We expect immediate, guaranteed algorithmic certainty. If I input my money, I demand the exact output I ordered within 48 hours.
And people apply that exact same vending machine logic to dating apps?
They really do. But Speed Mingle's FAQ says, in bold, uncompromising text, "We do not offer refunds if you don't find a match." Furthermore, it explicitly states, "We do not offer refunds if there is no one in your age group at the event."
It is a forceful rejection of the commodification of romance.
Right.
They are loudly reminding a deeply conditioned consumer base that human chemistry is volatile, unpredictable, and entirely unmanufacturable.
They are telling you up front, you are not buying a soulmate for a $35 ticket fee. You are paying for the curation.
The environment.
You are paying to rent the venue. You're paying for the encryption of the SmartSync privacy shield. You're paying for the psychological research behind the cards. And you are paying for the opportunity to exist in a curated space with other intentional human beings.
Exactly. They construct the arena, they enforce the rules of engagement, and they guarantee the physical safety of the participants. But they cannot swing the bat for you.
You have to step up.
The responsibility for the actual connection rests entirely on the shoulders of the two individuals at the table. By stating this so aggressively in the FAQ, they actively filter out the entitled, outcome-obsessed consumer and attract attendees who are grounded in reality and resilient enough to handle a night of near misses.
It sets the perfect expectation. We will give you the best possible environment, but you still have to do the work of being human.
Well said.
Which brings us to the core thesis of this entire deep dive. When we zoom out and look at this 25-year saga, from the analog experiments in Omaha in 2001, through the brilliant 14-year strategic hibernation where they let the swipe apps burn the culture to the ground, to this tech-fortified 2026 relaunch, we realize what Speed Mingle is actually selling.
And it isn't dates.
No, they aren't selling dates. They are selling a heavily guarded, technologically enforced sanctuary for our natural state of face-to-face communication.
They have relegated the technology to its proper subservient role. The SmartSync app operates strictly as a highly efficient bouncer standing outside the nightclub of your personal life.
I love that analogy.
The bouncer checks the credentials, ensures mutual alignment, and maintains a secure perimeter to keep the bad actors out. But the bouncer is not the party. The party only happens inside when you put the device away and look someone in the eye.
The app is the bouncer, not the party. We spent the last decade believing the app was the party. We thought the scrolling was the event. And it left 127 million people miserable, ghostlighted, banksing perfectly good relationships, and staring at screens in the dark.
Speed Mingle is just forcibly escorting us back to the table.
And this trajectory leaves us with a profound concept to consider, something that sits quietly beneath all the data and history we've discussed today.
A final thought for the listeners.
Yes. If a pioneering, forward-thinking social company in 2026 is currently deploying millions of dollars in highly sophisticated, encrypted software architecture solely for the purpose of facilitating analog, in-person eye contact.
What does that portend for the future of Silicon Valley?
Does this suggest that the ultimate, most advanced evolution of social technology will be to eventually render itself completely invisible?
It's a huge question.
Will the greatest, most lucrative applications of the next decades be the ones that execute their functions so flawlessly and so quietly in the background that we entirely forget we are using them while we talk to the person sitting across from us?
That is a phenomenal question. The ultimate technological achievement might just be getting out of humanity's way.
To everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Speed Mingle ecosystem. We want to leave you with a practical challenge this week based on everything we've unpacked. Try bypassing the small talk loop in your own life.
Just skip it.
The next time you find yourself interacting with a stranger, at a coffee shop, a networking event, or even a family gathering, skip the "what do you do for work" routine. Channel the 21st century courting cards. Ask them what the most absurd interaction they had this week was. Ask them what they are irrationally passionate about.
Just try something different.
Stop treating the people around you like a vending machine and see what happens when you just embrace the friction of a real conversation. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
Thank you for listening
and watching on the new Speed Mingle TV network.